Helena was 60 years old when she received the news that changed her life forever. For many, the idea of a woman at that age getting pregnant was absurd, out of the question. But for her, it was the beginning of a dream that had long seemed unattainable. Since she was young, Helena had dreamed of being a mother. However, fate had not been kind to her. After countless failed fertility treatments and the loss of 2 husbands, she began to accept that motherhood, for her, might never be a reality. Helena's life was not easy. Over the years, she went through several trials that made her rethink her dreams. After her first marriage at age 28, she and her husband tried to have children for years without success. Frustration and emotional exhaustion eventually led to the end of the relationship. Her second marriage brought renewed hope, but once again, fate betrayed her when, at the age of 43, she lost her husband in a car accident. From then on, Helena began to accept that her life would be lived without the role of mother that she so desired. However, modern science and advances in reproductive medicine have begun to open doors that were previously closed. When Helena reached 60 years old, she no longer thought about getting pregnant. Advancing age seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, and she was at peace with the life she had built, despite the absences. But it was during a routine consultation with his doctor, Dr. Kowalski, that the possibility was presented to him in a surprising way. He mentioned that although the procedure was highly risky for a woman her age, there was a chance, however small, that she could achieve her dream of becoming a mother. Helena was stunned by the idea. Being a mother at age 60 was something she had never imagined. Society certainly didn't approve, and she knew she would be judged by many. Furthermore, pregnancy, if it occurred, would pose numerous risks to your health. However, the proposal filled her with hope. For the first time in decades, a spark of possibility ignited within her, and the idea of holding a child in her arms became irresistible. Against all odds, Helena decided to try. His family, made up of brothers and nephews, reacted with surprise and skepticism. They loved Helena and wanted the best for her, but they believed that motherhood, at that point in life, was a dangerous and reckless decision. However, Helena, stubborn and determined as always, did not let herself be discouraged. She had already sacrificed a lot in life, and if there was even the slightest chance of achieving her biggest dream, she was willing to take the risk. The first step was to find a specialist fertility clinic that was willing to help her. This wasn't easy. Many doctors refused to perform the procedure, citing his advanced age and the extreme health risks. But Helena didn't give up. Finally, after weeks of searching, she found a clinic that accepted more challenging cases. There, she met Dr. Tomasz, a renowned IVF specialist who was not only willing to help her, but also recognized Helena's strength and determination as unique. The decision to move forward was made, but the path was just beginning. Helena knew that the process would be long and full of obstacles, but her mind was made up. Now, she had a competent medical team by her side and the hope that, against all expectations, she could accomplish what many considered impossible. The IVF process, even for younger women, is fraught with uncertainty and challenges. For Helena, aged 60, these challenges were amplified to levels she could never have imagined. Once you decided to move forward with treatment, the first step was to prepare your body for fertilization. Dr. Tomasz explained that, due to his age, intensive treatment would be necessary to increase his chances of success. This would involve a series of hormonal injections to prepare your uterus and stimulate the production of viable eggs. Helena knew that the next few weeks would be exhausting, both physically and emotionally. The daily injections were painful, and side effects soon began to manifest themselves. Hot flashes, constant nausea, and extreme fatigue became part of his routine. However, she did not complain. Each injection, each discomfort, was seen by her as a small sacrifice on the way to achieving her biggest dream. His determination was unshakable, and the desire to hold his own son in his arms gave him the strength he needed to continue. During treatment, Helena had several consultations with Dr. Tomasz, who closely monitored her progress. Although he was optimistic, there was always an unspoken worry in the air. Everyone knew that the probability of success was low, but no one wanted to admit it out loud. Helena's age was a crucial factor, and everyone on the medical team was aware of the risks to her health. However, Helena's resilient spirit inspired everyone. She was willing to risk everything to make her dream come true, and the medical team was determined to do everything they could to help her. After weeks of preparation, the day of egg collection arrived. It was a delicate and important procedure, as Helena's eggs needed to be viable for fertilization to occur successfully. The collection took place without any major complications, and the eggs were immediately sent to the laboratory, where they would be fertilized with the donor's sperm, carefully selected to guarantee genetic compatibility. This was another emotional challenge for Helena, as, without a partner, she had to face the reality that her son would not have the genetic material of a man she knew or loved. Even so, she was willing to accept this condition. The days that followed were of intense anxiety. Helena anxiously awaited the results of the fertilization. Each call from Dr. Tomasz caused her heart to race, and she could barely sleep at night, tormented by the fear that the embryos wouldn't survive. The treatment had already been grueling, and the possibility of failure was a devastating thought that she tried to keep out of her mind. However, Helena knew that if there was any chance, no matter how small, she was willing to continue. Then came the day she feared and longed for. Dr. Tomasz called to report that the fertilization had been successful. 3 viable embryos were formed. It was a miracle considering all the odds. Helena could barely contain her tears of joy. However, Dr. Tomasz was clear. Successful fertilization was just the first step of many. Now, the embryos needed to be implanted, and Helena's body would need to respond well to the procedure. The next few weeks would be decisive. Helena went to the hospital on the day scheduled for the embryo transfer. Once again, the procedure was delicate but went without any apparent complications. Now all that was left was to wait. The following days would be the longest of his life. Every little symptom, every sensation in his body was analyzed and questioned. Helena knew that the next pregnancy test would reveal whether her dream of becoming a mother would finally come true or whether, once again, she would face disappointment. The days after the embryo transfer were a true test of patience and resilience for Helena. Each morning, she woke up with a mixture of hope and fear. Her body seemed to be sending her mixed signals, and she didn't know if the slight nausea she felt was a good sign or just side effects of the treatment. The weeks of waiting for the first pregnancy test were suffocating. She tried to occupy her mind with daily activities, but the thought of the imminent outcome never left her mind. During this period, Helena avoided talking to her family about what she was going through. Although her brothers and nephews knew she was involved in fertility treatment, they didn't know how advanced the process was. She feared that when she shared her hopes, she would be inundated with well-intentioned but discouraging advice. After all, many still believed it was crazy to try to get pregnant at that age, and Helena didn't want other skepticism to weaken her resolve. She preferred to face this battle alone, with the discreet support of her medical team. To help deal with her anxiety, Helena returned to walking daily through the city's parks. These moments of contact with nature brought her a little peace, and she allowed herself to imagine, in silence, what she would do if the pregnancy test was positive. She thought about the nights cradling a baby in her arms, the first words she would hear, and the small gestures that would be part of a child's growth. These thoughts warmed her and gave her strength to bear the anguish of waiting. Dr. Tomasz had been clear when explaining that the first signs of a possible pregnancy could appear between 10 and 12 days after the embryos were transferred. However, he also warned her that success was not guaranteed, even with successful fertilization. For Helena, each day was an emotional challenge, trying to stay positive, but without creating unrealistic expectations. She knew that many women, even younger ones, faced disappointment in this process. And although science had done the impossible by allowing her to get to that point, biology was still unpredictable. Finally, after almost 2 weeks of waiting, Helena was called to Dr. Tomasz's office to take the long-awaited pregnancy test. The ride to the clinic was silent. She was filled with a strange, almost surreal calm. Deep down, a small voice inside her told her that everything would be fine, but she refused to get her hopes up too much, for fear of eventual disappointment. The consultation was quick. The blood test was taken, and now, once again, all that was left was to wait. When the phone rang, late in the afternoon of that same day, Helena knew it was Dr. Tomasz with the results. With shaking hands, she answered. The doctor's voice was calm, but with a tone that she couldn't immediately decipher. "Helena," he began, "I have good news. The pregnancy test came back positive." For a moment, Helena's world stopped. She was speechless. The information seemed to take a while to process in his mind. Pregnant. After so many years of struggle, so many broken dreams, so many barriers, she was finally pregnant. Tears began to silently stream down her face. She could barely respond to Dr. Tomasz, who was carefully explaining the next steps. There were still many precautions to be taken, and the pregnancy was still considered high risk due to her age. However, the fact was that she was pregnant, and that in itself was a miracle. The dream that for so long seemed impossible was now becoming reality. And, for the first time in years, Helena allowed herself to believe that she would really be a mother. The news of her pregnancy brought Helena immense joy, but, at the same time, a series of new concerns and challenges. Dr. Tomasz had been very clear. Due to her advanced age, Helena would need rigorous medical care throughout her pregnancy. She would undergo a series of regular exams and constant monitoring to ensure the health of both her and the baby. Furthermore, the risks of complications were high, and any sign of abnormality would have to be treated with the utmost seriousness. The first few months were especially difficult. Helena began to feel morning sickness, something that, despite the discomfort, made her smile. It was tangible proof that her pregnancy was progressing. However, as her body began to adjust to the new reality, other challenges arose. The extreme tiredness, common to many pregnant women, was even more pronounced in her, and doctors warned her to take extra care. Her cardiovascular system, for example, was under pressure that was unusual for younger women. Helena, who had always been active and independent, needed to completely change her routine. The long walks and small projects at home that once filled her days had to be drastically reduced. She found herself forced to rest more and accept help from her family, something that didn't come naturally to her. Out of pride or habit, Helena was always the type of person who liked to solve things alone. Now, however, she knew that her body needed all the care it could get, and, as difficult as it was, she began to accept this new rhythm. Little by little, Helena began to tell some people close to her about her pregnancy. His sister, Zofia, was the first to know. The shock was immediate, followed by a barrage of concerned questions. "But are you okay? How do doctors allow this? Is it safe for you?" Zofia was genuinely concerned about her sister's health, and couldn't help but question the wisdom of a pregnancy at age 60. However, Helena was patient and explained the entire process, from the treatment to the rigorous care she was receiving. "I'm fine, Zofia. And, for the first time in a long time, I'm truly happy," replied Helena, trying to reassure her sister. As the weeks passed, Helena's belly began to grow, and the baby's first movements became noticeable. This was one of the most emotional experiences for her. Feeling the baby move inside her was something she had dreamed of for so long, and when it finally happened, it was like a constant reminder that her dream was coming true. Every little movement filled her with a love she had never felt before. However, despite the happiness, fears were still present. Helena knew that any complication could put her life and that of the baby at risk. Each appointment with Dr. Tomasz was a mix of relief and anxiety. Fortunately, initial exams indicated that everything was going as expected, but the medical team remained alert, monitoring every little detail. Helena's pregnancy was rare and extremely delicate, and everyone knew that there was still a long way to go. For Helena, with each passing day, the reality of becoming a mother became more concrete. However, the physical burden was starting to take a toll. She felt more tired than she had ever been, and the pain in her back and legs, common to pregnant women, was even more intense due to her age. But despite everything, she was determined to continue. Her strength came from the unconditional love she already felt for her baby. She knew that, regardless of the challenges, she was willing to go all the way to ensure the birth of her child. As Helena's pregnancy progressed, it became impossible to hide her condition, and she found herself faced with a new challenge, dealing with the reactions of those around her. Although her sister Zofia and some close friends supported her, word soon spread, and comments began to emerge. Society, in general, was not used to the idea of a 60-year-old woman getting pregnant, and many expressed their opinions without any filter. Some thought it was reckless, others selfish. There were those who believed that Helena was putting her life at unnecessary risk. When she started leaving the house with her belly visible, Helena noticed the curious and, at times, judgmental looks of people on the streets. The whispered conversations she heard as she passed bothered her, but she decided she wouldn't let it shake her resolve. After all, she had always known that her decision to get pregnant at that age would be seen as unusual, to say the least. But Helena, with her characteristic stubbornness, was used to defying expectations and following her own path. Despite the looks and comments, Helena also received support from unexpected people. Some older women, who knew her story, approached her to express admiration for her courage. They understood Helena's deep desire to be a mother and supported her on her journey, even if they hadn't made the same decision in their own lives. This support, although discreet, brought Helena a sense of comfort, showing that, for some people, her choice was seen as an act of resistance and strength. His relationship with Zofia, who initially reacted with concern, also changed. Although she was still wary about the risks Helena was facing, Zofia began to realize how much the pregnancy meant to her sister. Seeing her so happy and determined, Zofia started to support her more actively, offering help whenever necessary. She became a constant presence, accompanying Helena to medical appointments and helping with daily tasks that became increasingly difficult as the pregnancy progressed. However, one of the biggest challenges for Helena was facing criticism from her own medical team. Although Dr. Tomasz was by his side from the beginning, some other doctors and nurses at the clinic didn't hide their skepticism. Many saw her pregnancy as too risky and made a point of reminding her of this at each appointment. "You are aware of the risks, aren't you?" was a constant question Helena heard, and although she knew the doctors were just doing their job, it left her frustrated. She didn't need reminders about the dangers. "I was fully aware of them." Helena decided that, to maintain her mental and emotional health, she would need to protect herself against these comments. She stopped reading news and avoiding conversations about her pregnancy in public. Her departures from home became rarer, and she preferred to focus on the people who truly supported her. Her routine now revolved around preparing for the baby's arrival. With Zofia by her side, she began planning the child's room, buying furniture and choosing clothes with care. As the months passed, Helena's pregnancy became news that many in the community could not ignore. Some began to respect her strength and determination, while others continued to view her with skepticism. But at the end of the day, Helena knew that the only opinion that really mattered was her own. She had made a conscious decision and knew that she was willing to face all the challenges, physical and social, to fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. Deep down, Helena knew that, sooner or later, society would adjust to the reality of her pregnancy. But for her, the most important thing was to prepare for the most special moment of her life, the birth of her son. Regardless of criticism or support, she was on her way to accomplishing the impossible. As the months passed, Helena's pregnancy seemed to be progressing well, despite all the worries and challenges that surrounded her. However, when she reached the 7th month of pregnancy, she had an unexpected scare that almost ruined everything. On a morning like any other, while drinking her coffee and reviewing the shopping list for the baby, Helena felt a strong abdominal pain that made her immediately stop what she was doing. The pain was unlike anything she had ever felt, and her maternal instinct warned her that something was wrong. Without wasting time, Helena called Zofia, who quickly took her to the hospital. On the way, the pain intensified, and Helena began to fear the worst. She knew that because of her age and the complications inherent in pregnancy, there was a real risk of premature birth or even something more serious. Zofia, nervous, tried to remain calm as she sped through the city streets. "Everything will be fine, Helena," she said, trying to reassure her sister. But Helena felt fear taking over. She had already come so far, But now she feared that her dream was falling apart. At the hospital, the medical team quickly sprung into action. Dr. Tomasz was called immediately, and after a series of tests and monitoring, he finally came to speak to Helena. "You are in premature labor, Helena. We will do everything we can to delay the birth and ensure the baby has more time to develop inside you. But we need to act quickly." Tomasz's words were a blow to Helena, who now faced the possibility that her child could be born prematurely. She was immediately admitted to hospital and placed under intensive care. The next few hours would be crucial in determining whether doctors would be able to stop the labor from progressing. Helena, despite her fear, remained firm. What else could she do other than trust the medical team that accompanied her throughout her pregnancy? Dr. Tomasz was at her side, assuring her that they would do everything possible to stabilize the situation and prevent premature birth. During the following days, Helena remained hospitalized, with her body reacting to the treatment that doctors administered to prevent the birth from progressing. Every day the baby remained in the womb was a small victory. Helena was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but she remained determined to fight for her son. Zofia did not leave her side, and the medical team monitored Helena closely, ready to intervene at any sign of emergency. After a week of uncertainty, Helena's condition began to stabilize. Dr. Tomasz finally brought good news. "We managed to postpone the birth, Helena. We still need to be cautious, but I believe that you will be able to continue the pregnancy for a few more weeks, which is crucial for the baby's development." His words were an immense relief for Helena, who finally allowed herself to relax a little after days of tension. However, she knew that the scare had been a warning that the final stretch of her pregnancy would be even more delicate. The risk of complications remained high, and doctors were prepared to perform an emergency delivery at any time. Helena was released from the hospital, but with clear instructions to rest until the baby was born. Zofia set up a real operation at home, ensuring that Helena had all the support she needed to follow medical instructions to the letter. The scare served as a reminder to Helena of the fragility of that pregnancy. She knew that each extra day her baby remained inside her was crucial to ensuring her health. "And now, more than ever, I was willing to do whatever was necessary to ensure a safe and healthy birth." After the scare in the hospital, Helena returned home with the recommendation of absolute rest. She knew that the next few days would be crucial to ensuring the baby's health and, at the same time, preserving her own life. The fear of a new episode or an imminent premature birth hung over her, but her determination remained intact. Zofia, faithful to her commitment, practically moved into her sister's house, taking care of her day and night. Together, they faced the final stretch of the pregnancy with a mixture of apprehension and hope. Helena started to follow an extremely controlled routine. The rest was complete. No physical exertion, walking, or household chores. Everything she needed was within reach of her bed or a comfortable armchair in the living room. Zofia organized meals and strictly controlled the timing of medications prescribed by Dr. Tomasz. Helena read books about motherhood and child development, while imagining what it would be like to hold her baby in her arms. The baby's movements in her belly were constant and brought her a sense of relief, a reminder that, despite everything, life was developing inside her. Visits to the doctor became even more frequent. With each appointment, Helena and her medical team knew they were closer to the decisive moment. Dr. Tomasz was clear in his instructions. "Helena, we are buying time, and this is essential for the baby's health. But you must be prepared for the possibility of an early birth. Your body is already showing signs that the pregnancy cannot reach the end of the 9th month, and we are ready to intervene at any time." Even with all the uncertainty, Helena clung to the idea that the baby could be born healthy. She did not allow fear to dominate her. Whenever he lay down to rest, he visualized the moment when his baby would finally enter the world. "I had already chosen the name. Kasia if it were a girl and Pyotr if it were a boy." The simple act of choosing the names gave her a feeling of closeness to the child, as if the bond between mother and child was already being created even before birth. Zofia, in turn, tried to disguise her concern with good humor. She was always protective of her older sister, But she never imagined that she would be taking care of Helena during such a late pregnancy. "You've always liked doing things your way," joked Zofia. "But getting pregnant at 60? That's a surprise no one expected." Despite the constant worry, the two laughed together, trying to alleviate the tension that permeated the environment. Helena appreciated her sister's unconditional support, who, despite everything, never questioned her decisions since the beginning of the pregnancy. When Helena reached her 8th month, the pace of exams and monitoring intensified. Doctors were impressed with her ability to carry the pregnancy to that point, considering all the risks. Each week that the baby remained in the uterus, the greater the chances of it being born healthy. Helena knew she was almost there, but also that the moment of birth would be decisive, both for her and the baby. Everyone was prepared for an emergency C-section if anything got out of control. Meanwhile, Helena's house was transformed to welcome the baby. Zofia and other friends helped set up the room, paint the walls a soft tone, and set up the crib she had chosen with so much care. The small collection of clothes was folded carefully on the dresser, and Helena spent hours imagining the day she would put her baby to sleep there. The dream she had cultivated for decades was almost becoming a reality. The final days of pregnancy were filled with anxiety and anticipation. Helena knew that, at any moment, she could go into labor, and this time, there would be no way to avoid it. All that was left was to wait and trust that her body, even at age 60, would be able to bring her child into the world safely. "Every morning I woke up and felt the baby moving was a victory." Now, she was ready to face the most important moment of her life. At the beginning of the 35th week of pregnancy, when Helena was already approaching the long-awaited moment, the first signs that the baby was ready to be born began to appear. It was a peaceful morning when Helena was awakened by a familiar pain, but this time more intense and regular. Maternal instinct immediately alerted her. The moment had arrived. She called Zofia, who quickly prepared everything to take her to the hospital. The maternity bag had been ready for days, waiting for this inevitable moment. At the hospital, the medical team was already prepared for Helena's birth, knowing that this could happen at any moment. Dr. Tomasz was called immediately, and Helena was taken to the pre-delivery room. Despite the tension in the air, she felt curiously calm. He knew that this was the moment he had been waiting for his entire life. The room was full of professionals ready for any eventuality, aware of the risks of pregnancy for a 60-year-old woman. Their focus was to ensure that both Helena and the baby came out of this process healthy. After a few hours of monitoring, Dr. Tomasz announced that it was time to perform the cesarean section. Natural birth was not a safe option for Helena, and everyone was already aware that surgery would be the best alternative. Zofia was next to her sister, holding her hand and transmitting all the strength she could. "You're strong, Helena. You're almost there," she said, her eyes full of emotion. Helena, despite her anxiety, smiled. "I know. We're almost there." The cesarean section was performed with great care and precision. The silence in the room was interrupted only by the commands and instructions of the medical team, who worked with extreme concentration. Helena, with her heart racing, tried to remain calm, but the weight of that moment was overwhelming. She had waited decades for this moment, and now it was all just a few minutes. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, the most anticipated sound filled the room: a baby crying. Helena couldn't hold back her tears when she heard her son's first cry. Kasia. She was a healthy girl, weighing 2.7 kilos, and the doctors declared her in perfect health. Dr. Tomasz, visibly moved, picked up the little girl and placed her in Helena's arms, who was still on the operating table. "Here is your daughter, Helena," he said with a sincere smile. "You did it." When holding Kasia for the first time, Helena felt an indescribable happiness, something she had never experienced before. It was as if all the suffering, struggles, and uncertainties were worth it in that single moment. Kasia was perfect. His small fingers, his delicate face, and his eyes that seemed to observe the world for the first time filled Helena with a peace she could never have imagined. All her life, she had been waiting for that moment, and now, at the age of 60, her dream was finally coming true. "Welcome to the world," "My Kasia," whispered Helena, as tears streamed down her face. Zofia, at the side, also couldn't contain her emotion. The sister, who had faced all adversity to fulfill her dream of motherhood, now held in her arms the daughter she so desired. "She's beautiful, Helena," said Zofia, moved. "You did it. Against all odds, you did it." Helena, unable to speak, just nodded, her heart overflowing with love. The birth was a success, and both Helena and Kasia were in good health. Dr. Tomasz, relieved and proud, declared that the most critical risk had passed. Now, everything depended on the postpartum care and love that Helena was ready to give her daughter. That night, a mother and daughter finally met for the first time, united by a journey of struggle, hope, and perseverance. The first days of Kasia's life were intense, but filled with love and care. Helena, who was still recovering from the cesarean section, received constant support from Zofia and a medical team who monitored her health and that of the baby closely. At the hospital, Helena could barely take her eyes off her daughter. Every little movement, every soft cry, was a confirmation that the impossible had become reality. The dream of being a mother, something that seemed so distant and unattainable for so many years, was now there, in her arms. After a few days of hospitalization, Helena and Kasia were released to go home. Returning home was an emotional moment. Helena, still recovering, was welcomed by Zofia, who had prepared everything so that the house was ready for the baby's arrival. Kasia's room, with its lavender walls and delicately arranged furniture, now came to life with the little girl's presence. Helena, with great care, placed her daughter in the crib for the first time, watching her sleep with a serene smile on her face. However, like every first-time mother, Helena faced the initial challenges of motherhood. The sleepless nights, Kasia's incessant crying, and physical exhaustion were part of the new routine. Even with the support of Zofia and other people close to her, there were times when Helena felt overwhelmed. After all, motherhood was new territory for her, and at 60 years old, her body no longer had the same energy as before. But the emotional strength that had sustained her during her pregnancy was still present, and Helena was willing to face each challenge with patience and dedication. Kasia, on the other hand, was a healthy and lively baby. From the first days, Helena noticed that her daughter had a strong personality. Even in the most difficult moments, when tiredness seemed to take over, Helena was filled with joy when she saw her daughter's development. The first smile, the first babbling of incomprehensible words, every little milestone in Kasia's growth was a victory for Helena. More than that, it was proof that, despite all the adversity, his decision had been the right one. Time passed, and Helena's life adjusted to the new routine of caring for the baby. Little by little, her health stabilized, and she gained more confidence in her maternal abilities. The initial fear of not being up to the challenge disappeared, giving way to a feeling of complete accomplishment. For her, caring for Kasia wasn't just a chore. It was the realization of a decades-long dream. And as her daughter grew, the bond between the two became stronger and stronger. However, Helena also faced questions and curious looks from outsiders. Whenever she went out with Kasia for walks or doctor's appointments, some people assumed she was the girl's grandmother. When they discovered it was the mother, reactions varied from surprise to incomprehension. However, Helena learned to deal with these comments calmly. She knew her journey was unique and that the decision to become a mother at age 60 was not something everyone would understand. But for her, other people's opinions didn't matter. What mattered was the unconditional love he felt for his daughter. As the months passed, Kasia grew quickly, and Helena was delighted with each new discovery the girl made. The first word she uttered was "mommy," and the sound of that word filled Helena's heart with indescribable joy. Everything she had been through, the physical challenges, the criticism, the fears, melted away the moment her daughter looked at her and smiled. Helena knew that, despite her aging body, her soul was renewed by motherhood. The days turned into months, and Helena saw her life filled with meaning and purpose with Kasia's presence. The dream she had harbored for decades was now her daily reality. And as she looked to the future, Helena knew she was willing to face whatever came her way, as long as she could be by her daughter's side, guiding and loving her every step of the way. As Kasia grew, Helena realized that her life had gained a new meaning, deeper and fuller than she could have ever imagined. She, who had already faced so many difficulties and losses over the years, was now experiencing a phase of renewal. Each day with Kasia was a constant reminder that despite the odds and criticism she faced, her dream of becoming a mother came true. With each daughter's smile, Helena felt her heart fill with gratitude. Kasia's first birthdays were moments of great emotion for Helena. With each new milestone in the girl's development, her first steps, her first more articulate words, Helena remembered the path she took to get there. She had defied medicine, society, and even her own body's limitations to bring Kasia into the world. And now, seeing her daughter grow up healthy and full of energy, she knew it had all been worth it. As time passed, Helena also began to think about Kasia's future in a more practical way. She knew that, due to her age, she might not be present in every moment of her daughter's life as she would like. This thought saddened her, but did not discourage her. Determined to ensure the best for Kasia, she began carefully planning for her daughter's future, ensuring that if anything were to happen, Kasia would have a solid support network and every opportunity to grow and thrive. Zofia, always by Helena's side, had become an essential figure in Kasia's life. For the girl, Zofia was both an aunt and a second mother, and this comforted Helena. Knowing that Kasia would have Zofia by her side, even in moments when she herself perhaps couldn't be there, gave Helena the peace of mind she needed. Furthermore, little Kasia grew up surrounded by affection, both from her mother and her aunt, and her development was marked by love and protection. The community around Helena also changed its perception about late pregnancy. What was once a source of astonishment and criticism, little by little became a story of inspiration for many. Helena came to be seen as an example of courage and determination. Her story was not only that of a woman who defied biology to achieve a dream, but also that of a mother who, against all expectations, was raising a daughter with all the love in the world. Little by little, people began to see her as living proof that maternal love knows no age. Helena, in turn, began to see motherhood not only as the fulfillment of a personal desire, but also as an opportunity to teach and learn. With each new challenge that arose, she was reminded that she was living the dream that had been denied to her for so long. Every morning with Kasia was a new chance to be grateful for the life I had built. Even on nights when physical fatigue became more evident, her daughter's smile was the fuel that kept her going. Time passed, and, with Zofia's support, Helena began to plan Kasia's educational future. She wanted to ensure her daughter had the best opportunities to learn and grow. Schools, extracurricular activities, and even starting a college savings account were among the plans that Helena created with so much care. She knew that despite her age, she still had a lot to offer Kasia, and she was determined to live every moment to the fullest. At the end of each day, when Kasia was already asleep in her crib, Helena sat on the edge of her daughter's bed and watched the girl sleep. The peace on Kasia's face brought Helena a sense of accomplishment that few words could describe. The love she felt for her daughter was so vast and deep that it seemed to fill every gap in her life. She knew that no matter what the future brought, the present was filled with happiness. Helena had finally found what she had always been looking for. Motherhood, for her, was not just a title or a life experience. It was his reason for being. Alongside Kasia, she discovered the strength that unconditional love can have, and, with that, built a life that, even at 60, was just beginning.